He held out his empty cup, only to be showered with contempt, until red and blue lights bathed the park in justice. Elias Thorne, a silhouette against the bruised dawn sky, moved with the deliberate, almost sorrowful pace of a man who had seen too many sunrises from places he never expected to be. 68 years etched lines of quiet endurance around his eyes, eyes that had witnessed the relentless dust of distant deserts and the muted green of jungles far from home. His shoulders, once squared beneath the weight of a nation's uniform, now bore the invisible burden of a life lived on the periphery, a life that, despite its sacrifices, had left him with little more than the thin fabric of his worn jacket and the hollow echo of unspoken gratitude. He approached the familiar park bench, its slats still slick with morning dew, the scent of damp earth rising to meet him. Another day, another breath, another hope that today would be different. The park, usually a sanctuary of muted birdsong and gentle breezes, held a peculiar stillness this morning, an almost ominous quiet that prickled the nape of his neck. He settled onto the bench, the cold seeping through his clothes, a familiar discomfort. His empty paper cup, crinkled and soft from repeated use, lay in his lap, a silent testament to his need. He didn't hold it out yet. The hour was too early for most, even for the restless souls who found solace in this urban oasis. The world was still largely asleep, shrouded in the lingering tendrils of night, and Elias preferred the solitude of these pre-dawn moments, when the city's harsh edges softened, and the memory of parades long past seemed almost tangible. He closed his eyes, drawing a slow, shallow breath, the scent of blooming azaleas momentarily eclipsing the faint exhaust fumes of the awakening city. Just for a moment, I am back there, young, strong, purposeful. A sharp, high-pitched laugh shattered the fragile peace. Elias's eyes snapped open. From the direction of the playground, a cluster of figures emerged from the gloom, indistinct at first, then sharpening into the defiant swagger of youth. 3 of them, no older than 15 or 16, their movements jerky, aggressive, their voices a discordant symphony of mockery. They carried phones, their screens glowing like malevolent eyes in the fading darkness. Elias's heart, usually a steady drumbeat of quiet resignation, gave a small, involuntary lurch. He had seen this before, the casual cruelty of the unburdened. One of them, a lanky boy with a shock of neon-streaked hair and a sneer already carved into his face, raised his phone, its lens aimed directly at Elias. "Look guys," he chirped, his voice dripping with feigned innocence, "it's a live-action poverty documentary." His companions snickered, their laughter brittle, sharp-edged, echoing too loudly in the quiet park. Elias felt the familiar heat of shame rising in his chest, a burning tide that threatened to overwhelm him. He tightened his grip on the paper cup, his knuckles white. "Don't look, don't react. They feed on it." He averted his gaze, focusing instead on a distant oak tree, its branches reaching like gnarled fingers toward the nascent light. He tried to project an air of invisibility, of profound indifference, but his hands trembled almost imperceptibly. The sound of their footsteps grew louder, closer, the crunch of gravel under their sneakers, a harsh counterpoint to the gentle rustle of leaves. He could feel their eyes on him, a collective, predatory stare that peeled away the last vestiges of his privacy, exposing him raw and vulnerable in the early morning chill. "Hey, old man," the lanky boy called out, his voice now laced with undisguised contempt. "Got any spare change, or just spare excuses?" His friends guffawed, a chorus of juvenile derision. Elias flinched, a subtle tightening of his jaw. He wanted to retort, to tell them of the cold nights in foxholes, the blistering days under hostile suns, the comrades whose faces he still saw in his waking dreams, but the words caught in his throat, strangled by a lifetime of silent endurance. They wouldn't understand. They couldn't. Before we continue with the story, be sure to let us know where you're watching from and what time it is in the comments. We love learning about our viewers. Now let's get back to the story. Another boy, bulkier, with a cruel smirk twisting his lips, stepped forward, his phone held aloft like a weapon. He pointed the camera at Elias's face, zooming in with exaggerated slowness. "Check out the crusty eye boogers, folks. Live and unedited. The others howled with laughter, their cruel delight amplified by the phones they clutched, each capturing this tableau of degradation for an unseen audience. Elias felt a fresh wave of humiliation, hotter, more intense, washing over him. His vision blurred slightly, the edges of the park bench rippling. Then came the first impact. A sudden, wet splat against his weathered cheek. Elias froze, his breath catching in his throat. The metallic tang of saliva filled his nostrils, a raw, vile assault. He could feel its sticky warmth, a cold trickle beginning to run down his jaw. He instinctively reached up, his fingers trembling as they brushed the uninvited wetness. It was warm, thick, sickening. He looked up, his eyes, for the first time, meeting theirs. A surge of primal indignation, sharp and pure, pierced through the layers of his usual stoicism. The lanky boy, his face contorted in a triumphant sneer, stood directly in front of him, having delivered the vile projectile. His friends were still recording, their faces alight with a perverse glee. "Oops," the boy simpered, his voice mockingly apologetic. "My bad. Must have been a loose one." The others shrieked with laughter, some doubling over, slapping their knees. The drone of a distant camera, unseen above the tree line, registered faintly in Elias's ears, a muted whir that added another layer of detached observation to his torment. He could feel the eyes of their unseen audience, 1,000 unseen judgments converging upon him. Elias lowered his hand, his fingers still sticky with the spittle. His jaw was set, his lips pressed into a thin line. He didn't wipe it off immediately, he simply looked at them, his gaze unwavering, a silent challenge that seemed to momentarily deflate their bravado. Their smiles flickered, their laughter dying down to an uneasy mumble. The lanky boy, perhaps sensing the shift in Elias's demeanor, puffed out his chest, trying to reclaim his dominance. "What? Gonna cry, old man? Go home to your cardboard box." The sneer, frozen on camera, was a testament to their unrepentant cruelty. The viral video, a raw and unedited spectacle of human degradation, exploded across the digital landscape like a festering wound. Within minutes of its upload, the grainy footage of Elias Thorne, his face smeared with spit, his dignity under siege, was being shared, dissected, and commented upon by millions. The cold light of 1,000 screens illuminated the cruel ballet, the lanky boy's sneer, the arrogant thrust of the bulkier teenager's camera, the collective, unfeeling laughter that followed the wet smack against Elias's cheek, the muted whir of the drone camera, a silent observer from above, provided a disquieting aerial perspective, framing the small, vulnerable figure of the veteran against the sprawling indifference of the urban park. Elias, oblivious to the digital inferno he had unwillingly ignited, sat on the park bench, the early morning chills seeping into his bones. The wetness on his face had dried to a taut, uncomfortable crust, a constant, irritating reminder of the violation. His trembling fingers still gripped the empty paper cup, a pathetic shield against the invisible arrows of scorn. "Why me? What have I done to deserve this?" The internal questions, bitter and unbidden, echoed in the silent chambers of his mind. He had faced bullets, endured explosions, watched friends fall, but this public humiliation felt like a uniquely insidious wound, one that bypassed flesh and bone to strike directly at the core of his spirit. The teenagers, emboldened by their perceived victory and the surging likes on their phones, had lingered, their presence a palpable weight in the air. Their mocking voices, though quieter now, still carried snippets of triumphant chatter and planning for their next viral exploit. Elias could feel their eyes on him, even as he steadfastly refused to meet their gaze, preferring the imagined sanctuary of his inner world. He could hear the clicks and taps of their phones, uploading, editing, broadcasting his shame to the world. The constant hum of the unseen drone, a mechanical sentinel, seemed to amplify his sense of isolation, of being utterly exposed. One of the teenagers, the lanky one, finally sauntered closer, his face a mask of feigned concern. "You all right, old man?" he asked, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Looks like you got a little extra seasoning." His companions stifled their laughter, their shoulders shaking. Elias remained silent, his gaze fixed on the distant horizon, where the sun was now beginning its slow ascent, casting long, distorted shadows across the dew-kissed grass. The refusal to engage, to acknowledge their cruelty, was his last, fragile defense, a silent act of defiance against their relentless assault. The taunts escalated, fueled by their growing online audience and the veterans' unwavering silence. "He's probably deaf," the bulkier boy jeered, his voice loud enough to carry. All that complaining about N probably blew out his eardrums. Elias's jaw tightened. They know nothing. They understand nothing of what it meant, what it still means. The memories, sharp and painful, flickered through his mind. The stench of napalm, the screams, the endless, suffocating fear. He had carried those burdens silently for decades, and now, to have them mocked by these unthinking children, was a fresh agony. Suddenly, a woman's voice, sharp with indignation, cut through the park's stillness. "What do you think you're doing? Leave him alone!" Elias's head snapped up. A woman, mid-40s, her face a storm of fury, stood at the edge of the path, her hands balled into fists. She had clearly just arrived, perhaps for a morning jog, and had stumbled upon the unfolding cruelty. The teenagers, momentarily stunned by the unexpected intervention, faltered, their smug expressions replaced by a flicker of annoyance. Their phones, however, remained steadily aimed at Elias. The lanky boy quickly recovered, puffing out his chest. "Mind your business, lady, we're just having some fun." The woman took a step forward, her eyes blazing. "Fun? This is harassment. You're spitting on an old man, probably a veteran." Her voice, though trembling slightly with anger, held an undeniable force, a clear line drawn in the sand. Elias felt a faint stirring of something he hadn't felt in a long time, a glimmer of hope, a tiny spark of validation in the face of overwhelming contempt. As the woman continued to verbally confront the teenagers, another voice, deeper and more authoritative, echoed through the park. "That's enough. Step away from him." Elias looked up, his heart giving another stronger lurch. A police car, its red and blue lights silently swirling, had pulled up to the curb. From it emerged a man in uniform, his shoulders broad, his gait purposeful. Elias recognized him instantly. Chief Miller, a man known for his quiet integrity and an uncompromising sense of justice. The chief's gaze, sharp and unblinking, swept over the scene, settling briefly on Elias before locking onto the teenagers. The teenagers, their faces paling, instinctively took a step back. Their phones, still recording, dipped slightly. The lanky boy stammered, "Ah, Chief, we were just filming a skit." Chief Miller's expression remained unreadable, but his eyes held a steely glint. "A skit that involves harassing and assaulting an elderly citizen?" His voice was calm, yet it carried an undeniable weight, a quiet authority that brooked no argument. The woman who had intervened nodded vehemently, her anger still simmering. A sudden, sharp wail pierced the air, growing rapidly louder. Sirens! Not one, but several, converging on the park. The teenagers, their bravado crumbling, exchanged panicked glances. Their faces, caught in the silent, swirling crimson and blue of the approaching emergency vehicles, reflected a dawning horror. The distant wail of sirens, sharpening, drawing closer with every agonizing second. The chief's calm command sliced through the morning air, a blade of authority cutting through the chaos. "Put your phones down, all of you, now." His voice, steady and unyielding, carried across the park, amplified by the sudden hush that had fallen over the stunned onlookers. The red and blue lights of the converging police vehicles bathed the scene in an eerie, pulsing glow, transforming the familiar landscape into a stage for unfolding justice. The teenagers, their faces ashen, their bravado utterly evaporated, fumbled with their phones, their fingers suddenly clumsy. The lanky boy, who minutes ago had been the architect of Elias's humiliation, now stood trembling, his eyes darting frantically from the chief to his equally terrified companions. Chief Miller, his gaze unwavering, stepped closer to the group, his hand resting lightly on the radio clipped to his belt. "You think this is a game? You think mocking and assaulting a decorated veteran is something to film for entertainment?" His voice, though still calm, held an edge of controlled fury that resonated through the suddenly silent park. The woman who had intervened stood beside Elias, her hand gently touching his arm, a gesture of solidarity and protection. Elias, still seated on the bench, watched the scene unfold with a quiet, almost detached intensity, the taste of dry spittle still lingering in his mouth. Another police officer, a younger man, approached the chief, speaking in a low, urgent tone. "Chief, the video's already everywhere. Millions of views. We're getting calls from all over the country. People are outraged." Chief Miller nodded, his jaw tight. He looked at the teenagers, his expression hardening. "Your skit has consequences. Big ones." The words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken promise. The teenagers, who had reveled in their fleeting digital notoriety, now recoiled from the very attention they had craved, realizing too late the destructive power of their actions. The chief then turned his attention to Elias, his voice softening slightly. "Mr. Thorne, are you all right?" Elias, finally breaking his silence, nodded slowly. "As well as can be expected, Chief." His voice was raspy, thin, but held a quiet dignity that seemed to shame the very air around the shaken teenagers. Chief Miller's gaze, warm with respect, met Elias's. "Not today, sir," he murmured, a promise spoken almost under his breath, a declaration that this injustice would not stand. With a decisive motion, Chief Miller unclipped his handcuffs from his belt. The metallic click echoed in the suddenly strained silence, a sound of irreversible finality. The teenager's eyes widened in collective horror. The lanky boy, his face a mask of disbelief, stammered, "Chief, no, we didn't mean anything." But the chief's expression was unyielding. "Ignorance is no excuse for malice. Your actions were deliberate, hateful, and recorded for the world to see." He gestured to the other officers. "Take them in. All three. Charges will include assault, harassment, and potentially hate crimes." The officers moved swiftly, professionally. The bulkier boy, suddenly reduced to a whimpering child, protested feebly as an officer took his arm. The lanky boy, a desperate plea in his eyes, looked at the chief, then at Elias, but found no mercy. The silence of the park was broken only by the click of handcuffs and the muffled sobs of the now subdued teenagers. As the officers led the trio away, their heads bowed in shame, the crowd of onlookers, which had swelled considerably, let out a collective sigh, a ripple of quiet vindication. Camera phones, once instruments of cruelty, now captured the arrest, their lenses gleaming like shattered glass under the flashing police lights. The viral video, still spreading like wildfire, would now have a different ending, one of accountability, not just degradation. Elias watched them go, a faint tremor passing through him. Chief Miller turned back to Elias, his expression softening once more. "Mr. Thorne, on behalf of this city, and as a fellow citizen, I apologize for what you've endured." He extended his hand, a gesture of profound respect. Elias, slowly, deliberately, reached out and shook the chief's hand, his grip firm despite the earlier trembling. The brief touch conveyed a silent understanding, a bridge built between two men who understood honor and service. The news crews, alerted by the swirling sirens and the burgeoning online outrage, now descended upon the park, their bright floodlights suddenly illuminating the scene. Microphones thrust forward, cameras whirred, capturing every nuance. Chief Miller, standing tall beside Elias, addressed the assembled media, his voice clear and resonant. "What happened here today was an absolute disgrace, but it also serves as a stark reminder we will not tolerate such behavior. Justice will be swift, and it will be public." As the chief spoke, Elias Thorne slowly rose from the bench, his shoulders, for the first time in what felt like an eternity, straightening. He looked directly into the brightest floodlight, his eyes, though tired, holding a steady, unwavering gaze. He raised his hand, slowly, deliberately, bringing it to his temple in a crisp, unwavering salute. The action, a silent testament to a lifetime of service and sacrifice, was captured by every camera, transmitted live to millions. The hush before the chief's badge gleamed under floodlights, now broken by the rapid-fire clicks of cameras, was filled with the powerful, resonating silence of a profound moment of reclaimed dignity.